Intern Aware campaigns for fair internships, or as I'm told, Yoljung pay in Korea. We believe that everyone would do better if we moved to a system where the main route from university to work was based on what you know, not who you know, or on parental wealth. We now work closely with the government in Britain, with businesses and labour organisations, but the campaign started for quite personal reasons. While I was at university, I was angry at seeing friends of mine who were bright and hard-working, but were having to give up on long-held professional dreams for no other reason than that they couldn't afford to work for free. These were people who had tried to play by the rules, but were faced by an often unbreachable barrier. This was a new thing that we hadn't been told about, and it felt deeply unfair. And a friend and I set up Intern Aware to try to change this. In today's presentation, I want to cover off three things. Firstly, the rise of internships and why they have become so important. Second, why unpaid internships are a problem for us all. And third, what good practice looks like. But first, what is an internship? I think it's important that we all understand what we're talking about, because this word internship can be used to mean quite different things in different companies and different countries, and often it isn't defined in law. An intern is often stereotyped as the person who makes tea or coffee for the office, but they're actually more likely to be doing the same work as other junior employees. Often the only thing that separates them is that title, intern. In fact, in Germany, 81% of interns stated that they were assigned tasks which were normally performed by regular staff. For the purposes of this discussion, I would define an internship as a relatively short period of informal, on-the-job training. An internship usually involves the intern doing tangible work, not just shadowing an employer. And an intern is usually motivated by the hope of future employment. It's a means to an end, not the goal in itself. To be clear, an internship is not an apprenticeship too. Apprenticeships are much more formalized working relationships, which are often formulated in agreement with the educational institution and the employer. So why have internships become so valuable? I think this is because good internships often offer the employer and the intern quite a lot. First, there's the need for soft skills, which Dale spoke so eloquently about. In fact, Harvard found that 80% of achievements in one's career are determined by soft skills, and only 20% are determined by hard skills. And this value that employers place on soft skills, particularly that adaptability, will only increase as we adjust to this fourth industrial revolution that we're hearing so much about. Internships are the best way for young people to get real experience of the workplace skills that they will need so that they can be effective in a full-time role from day one. And this is particularly important given employers are offering less training than in the past, and young people are staying with employers for shorter periods of time. It's also the need to signal these skills, because it's not just attaining soft skills that matters, it's also that internships can be useful to signal to an employer and show that they are demonstrating that they are work ready. Third is the fact that businesses want to try before they buy. There is a limit to what you can understand from someone in a 45-minute interview, and internships offering perhaps lasting perhaps a couple of months show employers what a potential employee is really like. And it's not just employers who want to try before they buy, but young people do too. Because interns aren't just looking to gain skills, internships give young people the chance to try out a potential career path so that they can make a more informed choice before fully committing. And so now internships are an integral part of that university to work transition across many developed economies. For graduates, they have gone from being a nice to have to being a must have. In the USA, 56% of graduating students had interned at least once before leaving university, and an even greater number will have interned before landing their first job. The European Commission estimates that in France and Germany, there are at least 1.5 million internships taking place each year, and as many as 5 million internships per year across the whole of the European Union. And these numbers are growing. There's been an increase. In the UK, for example, the number of interns has increased by 50% since 2010. As Hannah in Germany says, it doesn't matter how highly educated you are. If you want to get hired, you have to do internships. Or as the British think tank, the Institute for Public Policy Research found, and I quote, "Nearly half of employers reported that candidates who have not gained work experience through an internship will have little or no chance of receiving a job offer for their organization's graduate programs, regardless of academic qualifications." So it's understandable that internships have become more important. But given that they are so important, it's really important that they are high quality and affordable. And this is why the fact that so many internships are unpaid is a real problem for all of us. Because if internships are unpaid, then these opportunities cease to become offered purely on the basis of merit, but rather on the basis of parental wealth. As a result, unpaid internships can act as barriers that cut out the vast majority of young people who can't afford to work for free for months on end. Because the cost of doing an unpaid internship is significant. They can last for many months, and sometimes for as long as a year, and often involve relocating from someone's hometown to a major city. It may not even be the only internship that they take. I've spoken to people who have spent years of their lives interning. One woman I met had done 5 unpaid internships before she landed her first job. Now, in the European Union, an average internship lasts for 4 months. This isn't just 4 months without pay, but 4 months with a range of extra costs like housing. In the UK, a country which, like South Korea, has an economy centered on one very big capital city, one think tank calculated that it costs about $8,000, or just under 9 million won, to do an unpaid internship in London. Now, this is money that most young people simply don't have, and this represents a problem for society. Now, polling from the UK, sorry to mention the UK again, shows that 3/4 of people believe that they or someone from a family like theirs could not afford to do an unpaid internship in London. Only 4% of people were sure that they could do it. 2 in 5 British people who were offered an internship have turned it down for financial reasons. Young people doing unpaid internships are often put in a vulnerable position. They are interning in order to get a full-time job, which means they can often be exploited in the workplace. We have heard stories of interns who are working round the clock for no pay or performing tasks which are totally unrelated to the job in hand, like cleaning out the office toilets, because they were so desperate for a full-time job, or at the very least, a good reference on their resume. What's more, many interns are strung along for month after month, being told that they might get paid if only they hang around that little bit longer. This is bad for those young people, but it's also a problem for their parents. I've spoken to parents who feel devastated that they have let their kids down. They say they've told their children to play by the rules, work hard at school and get to a good university, and then you'll be able to land a job. However, they're finding out at age 20 or 21 that actually they need to do more than that. They also need to be able to afford to be unpaid interns. Many parents can't afford to subsidize their kids for this final period, and can't bear the guilt that comes with feeling that they have failed to give their children a good head start. But this is not just a moral issue, because unpaid internships also represent a problem for businesses. Now, this happens for several reasons. First, access to talent. Internships have become a key way to recruit. For example, more than half of investment banking recruits at Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley come via their intern programs. Research shows that employers who pay their interns are more likely to recruit them. 46% of employers who paid their interns found this a useful method of recruitment, compared to just 32% for those who had unpaid internship schemes. So I think it's short-sighted here to limit the talent pool. Unpaid interns are much more likely to be from affluent backgrounds, and depending on the country, may also be from certain ethnicities or geographies. This is a problem, because research shows, as we've heard already, that diverse workforces perform better. A recent McKinsey report on 366 public companies found that diverse companies were performing substantially better than the industry averages. I think this is unsurprising, as these companies are able to draw on more talents. But new research also shows that, as Harvard Business Review has found, that diverse teams are simply smarter. Working with people who are different from you may challenge your brain to overcome its stale ways of thinking and sharpen its performance. So it's not just that you're broadening the talent pool, but it's that having diverse workforces actually challenge each other to perform better. Now, conversely, when you don't pay someone for work, nepotism becomes more likely. An analysis by the New York Times of 1,500 unpaid interns in the office of Michael Bloomberg, who was then New York's mayor, established that one in five of the 1,500 unpaid interns that he had used had been recommended by someone in the administration. Internships can even be bought and sold. America's Washington Center has placed nearly 50,000 interns since 1975 and charges $6,200 for a 10-week summer position. It says it's placed clients in the Treasury and the White House. Dream Careers says it has sold more than 13,000 internships in firms like Standard & Poor's. Fees for its 8-week internships start at $8,000. I think it's obvious that businesses will not be well served if people can literally buy their way into a company. Also, it's not just about access to talent, but also access to new ideas. Because for businesses to stay competitive, they need new energy and fresh ideas. Interns in many companies provide that stimulus while they're there. And so again, it doesn't make sense to limit yourself to people from one socioeconomic background. But paying interns isn't just an opportunity for companies. By not paying interns, companies can open themselves up to reputational threats. In many countries, and I'll be interested to hear your perspective on South Korea, but in many countries, the public have become openly hostile to unpaid internships. Polling in Britain shows that 85% of the public believe that interns should be paid, and just 2% believe that they should not be paid. In countries including Canada, France, and Australia, businesses using unpaid interns have been exposed to protests, which have led to embarrassing newspaper headlines and forced them to change practice. Unpaid internships can also represent a big legal headache, because they often fall under a legally grey area where they are actually often illegal. Because internships are a relatively recent phenomenon in many countries, this type of arrangement is often uncategorized under employment law. This means that if an intern meets the legal tests for being a worker or an employee, they are entitled to the minimum wage. These tests can include factors like whether the person is contributing value to that organization and whether they are expected to turn up on time. Where interns have legally challenged their employers for payment, and we've helped some to do so, they have usually been successful. And companies including Fox Searchlight Pictures in the USA and Sony in the UK have paid their interns following legal action. For governments, these challenges can create economic and social issues too. Because unpaid internships are unaffordable for so many people, they increase the likelihood of a skills mismatch taking place, with many capable people being locked out of career paths that they would be well suited for. And in the long term, this can have a very harmful effect on our economies. Second, because unpaid internships give a leg up to those people who already had more advantages and act as a barrier from those from less affluent backgrounds, they accelerate inequality. And third, because they represent a new cost for young people looking to enter the labour market, they contribute to the intergenerational inequality that affects many of our societies. So if these are the challenges with unpaid internships, then what does best practice look like? Interns should be paid a wage that allows them to live, but it doesn't need to be big bucks necessarily. Beyond that, we believe that an ideal internship will vary from industry to industry. What works in a global bank might not be the same as in a newspaper, but there are general principles about what makes a good internship that delivers value to both the intern and the employer. I'm going to work through just at each stage what good practice looks like. So at the recruitment stage, employers should try to widen the net for recruitment as far as possible. Apple is an example of a company that does this really well. It goes to university campuses, organizes hackathons, and advertises online. And the process should, for recruitment, be broadly similar to the approach that companies take for regular employees, with proper, rigorous, thought-out process given to how the skills and qualifications of the intern fit with the tasks they will be expected to fill. Job advertisements should give a clear indication of how long the internship will last, and at interview, the intern should be told honestly whether there is a real chance of obtaining a full-term contract. Good internship schemes should provide that opportunity for full-term employment for people who do well. I think unlike in normal recruitment, employers should focus on interviewing for skills, like analytical skills or teamwork, rather than just for experience, as interns are such an early stage of their careers. Second, so at the start of the program, at the induction, interns should receive a proper induction to the organization they enter to allow them to fully integrate. Whether you're joining a large organization or a small business, an intern just entering the job market may find the workplace intimidating. So it makes sense to set up a program of meetings with staff in the company to enable them to hit the ground running. During the internship, so just like your other employees, good management and supervision will make the intern more productive and develop more quickly. Organizations should ensure that there's a dedicated person who has ring-fenced time in their work schedule to supervise the intern and conduct regular performance reviews. For example, at Google, interns get a weekly 30-minute to an hour session with their mentor to discuss their plans and progress. And this mentor or manager should provide ongoing feedback to the intern, be their advocate over the period of the internship, and at the end of it, conduct a formal performance review to evaluate the success of their time. Finally, when you leave the internship, organizations should be providing interns with that reference letter that details the work they've undertaken, the skills and experience they've acquired, and the content of the formal performance review conducted at the end of the internship. I think interns should also be given the opportunity to feedback on their own experience at the exit interview, giving the organization that opportunity to reflect on its own performance in delivering internships. As I said, good internships at large organizations will also be thinking maybe about hiring those interns who perform well in roles. But beyond individual employers, what more can be done to move towards a system of high-quality paid internships? For governments, I think governments shouldn't be over-regulating internships out of existence. It's not their responsibility to determine best practice or interfere with the day-to-day running of internship programs, but they should introduce smart regulation to cut out the long-term unpaid internships that harm society in the long run, our economy as well. France and Germany have already set limits to the length of unpaid internships, and Canada has banned unpaid internships in federally regulated sectors of the economy. In Britain, we are calling for a 4-week limit to unpaid internships. This proposal, which is currently going through our Parliament, would allow short-term unpaid work to continue while stopping unaffordable long-term unpaid internships. To be clear, it would allow the kind of work shadowing where you're just kind of going and getting a feel of an employer to continue, but not these kind of very long-term unpaid positions. Interestingly, when polled on these proposals, 2/3 of British businesses actually supported them, in part because this policy would provide small and medium-sized businesses with real legal clarity about what the law is. I think this is important also, that our research also showed that the proposals would not lead to an overall reduction in the number of internships. I think this model, comes about from campaigning from groups like ours in the UK, but also around the world, and I'm sure that there will be opportunities for a similar thing to happen in Korea if there's a similar feeling here. But it's not just about governments, it's also about industry level employers taking action, because employers can work together to develop guidelines for best practice, which tends to improve the quality of internships. So in the UK, we've worked with a range of industry groups representing everything from accountancy to music and public relations to develop guidelines for their members' HR departments. I think this approach would work well in other countries too, and would help to raise the standards of internships. I'll end by saying that unpaid internships are a relatively new problem. I'm confident that enlightened employers and smart, far-sighted governments can, by working together, bring about a fairer, better system. They owe it to the next generation and themselves. Thank you for listening. I look forward to your questions.
Good job.